Bureau of the Fiscal Service was formed by combining the Financial Management Service and the Bureau of the Public Debt. Dave Lebryk, its commissioner, explains why.
Well, on October 7th of 2012, the Bureau of Public Debt and the Financial Management Service came together to form the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. And the Bureau of Fiscal Service has a very important mission. We make most of the government payments. We collect most of the money for the government. We account for the public debt, as well as report on the financial activity of the federal government. In addition, we do debt collection on behalf of federal agencies and provide shared services to over 188 customers. We have an appropriated budget around $360 million, and we have employees in 6 locations located across America. We have a payment center in Kansas City and a payment center in Philadelphia. We have 2 debt collection centers, one in Austin, Texas, and one in Birmingham, Alabama, and the bulk of our operations are done in the Washington, D.C. area and Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Lebryk describes his duties and how BFS supports the overall mission of the U.S. Department of the Treasury.
As the commissioner of the Bureau, my major responsibility is to set strategic direction for the organization. And at the same time, I think any good leader in an organization needs to be very much focused on the operational ongoings of the organization and the people of the organization. So for me, I probably spend a fair amount of my time on the strategic, setting the direction for the organization, establishing the priorities, but also making sure that we're delivering on these very important functions that we do on a daily basis. We also do things like financing the federal operations. So last year we conducted over 238 auctions, raising $8.1 trillion. And so when you see things like the number of Treasury securities that have been issued, or you see that payments have been made, or you see things reported on the federal deficit, that's all information that's coming from our Bureau. And it was really apparent during the government shutdown how really critical we are, not only to the functioning of the government, but also the functioning of the economy as a whole. Because if we're not doing these things like raising the money to finance the government operations, collecting the money, or making those payments, it has a significant impact on the economy.
Dave Lebryk explains the challenges he faces in his new leadership role.
Well, I think that there are a number of challenges that I think we as a Bureau face that are being faced across government. I think it's fair to say that budgets are going to remain tight for the foreseeable future. I think that demographics are changing significantly with the aging of the workforce. I also think that technology is evolving very rapidly, and our Bureau really is at the forefront of many of those things. And I'll give you an example. I mentioned the important payments that we make. About 3 years ago, we started an initiative called the All Electronic Initiative, and at that time, roughly 80% of all payments were being made electronically. Well, today, close to 98% of those benefit payments are being made electronically. And that's had a significant operational impact on the organization. Secondly, the demographics in the workforce have changed such that when you make these kinds of fundamental changes within the organization, you have a different dynamic than you would have had 20 years ago. And third, these were driven in large measure to reduce budgets. You know, it costs us about over $1 to produce a paper check. It costs us less than 10 cents to issue an electronic payment.
Dave Lebryk, Commissioner of the Bureau of the Fiscal Service, discusses his strategic vision for his organization.
We talk about lead, transform, and deliver when we think about the things that we're doing. And I would say that we don't anticipate that the budget pressures are going to get any less in the coming years. So we now are, looking out and sort of what are the next kinds of things that we need to be looking at in order to be sustainable longer term. And in that environment, I think we've also kind of positioned the Bureau in a very good place because other government agencies are experiencing the exact same thing. In fact, one of the reasons why I think we've been successful in some of our initiatives is the other government agencies are feeling the exact same pressures that we did, and what you're seeing is them having the pressures to focus on mission. And how do you sustain or how do you protect your core mission responsibilities? And quite often the back office operations are not part of that core mission. And so the pressures within those agencies right now are how do you deliver the sort of the infrastructure less expensively, the admin.
The federal government spends tens of billions of dollars annually on social programs with modest or poor results. In a climate of fiscal austerity, it is far better to cut programs with minimal impact and improve existing programs based on evidence from high-quality program evaluations. Kathy Stack, advisor for evidence-based innovation within the Office of Management and Budget, explains.
I'm in a new position that was just created in July, and it's kind of got an interesting title. I'm the advisor for evidence-based innovation. And I've got a terrific staff of all of 3 other people who work with me. And it's our job right now to help federal agencies use evidence, build evidence, figure out how to learn from each other so that we can really bring to the fore the use of data and evidence in how agencies make decisions. There are some certain important things that have to get done in government, and I can either try to do it from the outside or do it from the inside. And I was given the opportunity to try to do it from the inside in terms of this focus on evidence.
The federal fiscal situation necessitates improvements in efficiency and doing more with less. Programs can use a broad range of analytic and management tools to learn what works and what does not work. Kathy Stack distinguishes performance measurement from program evaluation.
Performance measurement is really thinking about what's the process that you're going to use to try to get to the result that you know you're supposed to be achieving. It's an art. It looks at inputs, process measures, outputs, outcomes in order to manage programs, set goals, continually improve performance, looking at day-to-day operations and are you on track. It's really well suited to dashboards where you're looking at your performance over time on different indicators. And that's, frankly, every organization needs to use performance measurement as a management tool. And I think, unfortunately, they're not managing the data to make sure they're improving. Now, evaluation answers different questions. You're trying to figure out which one of these or which collection of these is really having the greatest impact on outcomes and in ways that we would know that if we didn't have this program, we wouldn't be getting those results. We had wars going on between those who believed in phonics and those who believed in whole language. And fortunately, we had a strong child development center over at NIH that was able to go in and do controlled experiments on reading approaches and discovered that, you know what, this phonics-based approach does seem to be getting better impacts. It's essential, and there aren't that many places where we're doing it well. New York City set up the Center for Economic Opportunity, and it was set aside a pot of $100 million or so, and they were charged with coming up with a portfolio of strategies that were going to be able to make a measurable difference in reducing poverty in New York City. And it's those high-stakes decisions where that rigorous evaluation is just really important in telling you whether you're on.
Federal dollars flow to states and localities through competitive and formula grants. Grant reform can strengthen the use of evidence in government. For Kathy Stack at OMB, the most exciting advances in this area are the so-called tier evidence or innovation fund grant designs.
If we provided an incentive in our grant programs for applicants to come in with the strongest possible evidence to show us that a particular strategy was ready to be scaled up because it had strong random control trials or quasi-experiments to support it, that maybe we could change the dynamic in the incentive structure. But we have different levels of investment in 3 different tiers. First, there is a scale-up tier where applicants can get up to $20 million, but they have to bring in project proposals that are backed by the strongest possible evidence. Random control trials, strong quasi-experiments, multiple studies that basically give us as taxpayers confidence that this has been shown to work in enough places with sufficiently strong results that if we invest a lot of money in it, that's a good investment. We're likely to get results elsewhere. Then we have a next tier of validation grants and education's program. These are grants of up to $12 million. So it's less money for promising practices with moderate evidence. Our bottom tier is called development grants. They're grants of up to $3 million. And these require really, really exciting proposals with strong potential, but they don't have to have that extensive evidence backing. They do, at all of these levels, have to have a strong evaluation design so that as we are making these investments, we're continuing to learn whether or not they're having impact. And the goal, ultimately, is for things in the development tier, if they're successful, they should move up to the validation tier and the scale-up tier and eventually be incorporated into the base formula programs in the sense that States and localities know what works, and they can replicate these strategies in their own funding streams.
Up next on this edition of the Business of Government magazine, we'll be focusing on complex contracting and 6 trends driving change in government when this special edition of the Business of Government Hour returns.